Strap on your rowing shoes and prepare for an invigorating journey with the remarkable Husnara, an analyst and seasoned runner with an infectious passion for mental health advocacy. Our conversation charts a remarkable transformation from a youngster who once sidestepped sports to a beacon of hope who now champions the psychological uplift that comes from the rhythmic beat of footsteps on the trail. As with most of my interviews, I have split this into three parts. The first part, I started talking about her relationship with running at school and how this changed when she got into her mid-teens. Next week, we delve deeper into her new book. So you're thinking about running, but not sure how to take the first step. My name is Brian Patterson, and I'm here to help. Welcome to Brian's ROMpod. Well, hey there, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Brian's ROMpod, the go-to podcast for all things running. And I'm your host, Brian Patterson, and I've got a fantastic guest lined up for you today. Now, in the last 10 years or more, this subject has become very much part of our everyday lives, and that is mental health. Well, today, after months of planning, we have a special guest to discuss this very subject. Today, we're chatting to Hussnara, a writer, analyst and passionate advocate for the therapeutic power of running. She is currently working on her debut book titled The Power of Running, Rewire, Negative Thinking, Process Trauma and the Awakening the Therapist Within. Now that's a title that grabs your attention. She's a great believer in turning the negative into positive, and I quote, "Imagine if I told you that the key to conquering life's greatest challenges could be found in the simple act of running. The Power of Running explores how running has a profound and scientifically proven ability to reshape in the way we deal with trauma and negative thoughts." But that's not all. Hussnara brings a wealth of experience to the table with a career spanning over 15 years in prestigious academic institutions of various departments in the UK government. She's not just a runner, she's an accomplished professional in the world of mental health. Originally from North London, Hussnara now resides in Bali with her husband and two children, living a balanced life that combines an intellectual pursuits, athletic interests, and family life. I'm excited to dig into her story and explore the incredible connections between running, mental health, and personal growth. So grab your running shoes and kick back and join me in welcoming the amazing Hussnara to Brian's ROMpod. Welcome. So,
thank you, Brian.
So how are you today?
Yes, I'm very good, thank you. Really excited to be speaking to you today. It's my first podcast as well, so
yeah,
even more excited.
Brilliant. And it's my first international interview, so which is great. And I'm very jealous that you live in Bali, because I noticed. I think I reached out. Maybe it was last year that you live near Ubud, is that right? And
That's right,
somewhere, it was a place that I went to when I was doing the round the world trip with a friend back in the late 80s, which is about a million years ago. So, but I remember it really fondly, and it was, fantastic. All the rice paddy fields and that kind of thing. I remember that. It was great. Yeah. So, well, like I do with most of my guests, I just wanted to find out as to what was your experience of exercise and running at school, So.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks, Brian. Yes. So I guess to be honest, I mean, exercise at school wasn't something I was particularly fond of. If I'm completely honest with you, I didn't really like PE. But yeah, so I used to love like climbing though. Climbing was fun and being on the trampoline and things like that, but genuinely didn't love sports back then. But when I turned 16, I don't know what it was about turning 16. That's when I started running. I don't know if it was just like the buzz of finishing like your GCSEs and then, feeling like you're on the brink of being an adult and kind of forming your own identity and ownership of your own body and all of this stuff. I don't know what it was, but I remember that summer after my GCSEs, I decided to start running.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up, and I lived close to really nice parks in London, so like near Primrose Hill. So I used to always see runners, all the time, and they just looked really happy.
Yeah.
That's all I remember. Genuinely, that's all I remember. They looked good and they looked happy. And I remember thinking, oh, when I get older, I want to look like that.
Yeah.
And genuinely, that's all it was. And then that's what sparked my interest in running at that early age. So then in the summer, after my GCSEs, I started running and just carried on since then. And now I'm 39. But my reason for running has definitely evolved and changed over time. And initially, I have to say, when I first started running, I did need a big motivation to carry on. So in the early days, like in my early 20s, I used to sign up to races, like not big ones, but like 10Ks, 5Ks and things. And that was my way of just carrying on with the running, a way of keeping fit, and just because I just enjoyed it.
Yeah. So there's nothing like in your family, like, your father or your mother or, your siblings, were they not into it, or it was just a self-motivation thing?
Totally. Yeah. So I come from an Asian background. So my parents are Bangladeshi. But running and sport is really not something part of our culture. And definitely not something that, I don't know, especially growing up in quite a conservative, like Muslim household, like for my mother, like seeing me in running clothes and stuff.
Oh dear.
It's not something she was like that proud about, to be honest.
Okay. So a bit controversial. Yeah,
a bit controversial. But I think over the years, she's actually changed her mindset about it too. So I remember in the early days, she wouldn't like me going out like that and running. But over the years, she encourages me, and she'll be like, oh, that's really good. She'll tell my siblings to do the same, or my sister-in-laws and other family members, oh, you need to go for a run, you need to go out. And it's just amazing to see the shift in her as well, having seen me do it and, be relatively healthy and happy through it.
But is that, not to go off topic, but has that been like a change of attitude over the last, 23 years in your culture?
Oh, totally. I think it's in that kind of community, it's a big shift that's also happening. And I notice it not just within like the Asian community, but also other ethnic minority communities, because I've spoken to also, there's a Tasha Thompson, founder of Black Girls Do Run. It's a big running community.
Yes, I've heard of that name. Yeah,
and they're brilliant. And also they talk about the same challenges in sort of in those kind of communities as well, in minority communities, because we're very underrepresented, in the running community. So she loves running, and she's been really a big advocate of getting, Black women to start running, so
there've been a
interesting.
few kind of sporting icons in, like, I think there was an Afghan woman who kind of like was kind of, I don't know whether she was threatened by the Taliban or something like that, and she competed in the Olympics, and I don't know, I think she might have done a middle distance or something like that. But they've been kind of like dotted in the last 20 years or so, that people have been breaking through and doing it as a professional sport. So
I mean, that's brilliant to hear. And I feel like it's, in terms of sort of looking at it from that ethnic minority perspective, I think we have a long way to go. A way to go, to be honest. It's only just scratching the surface of getting more people from my background, similar backgrounds, into these kinds of sports, for physical health and mental health.
So moving on in sort of just understanding about mental health itself as a subject. I mean, like I said, it's really come into its own in the last 10, 15 years, probably more, probably, in the last 10 years sort of thing. What in your opinion has really pushed that? Why has it sort of come to the forefront?
Well, I think there's a combination of different things. I think, firstly, I'm really pleased to see that we're talking about it a lot more and it's less stigmatizing. And I was in mental health research for over 10 years. I did a degree in psychology. So that was about, that was a long time ago now. But I came out of that field about 6-7 years ago. So it's good to see a big shift happen in that sense, in terms of people talking about it being less stigmatizing. And I think a lot of it comes down to, social media, celebrities talking about it. So all of these things, and also these schemes that are in the workplace, so people in the workplace are talking about it, recognizing that, mental health has an impact on productivity, all of that. So that's really good to see. But, if I'm honest with you, I feel like, although we are talking about it more, I feel in some ways we're also going in the wrong direction in terms of mental health. Yeah. And I can tell you why, because, for example, you just have to look at the numbers, to be honest. So I don't know. Have you looked at the figures for mental health problems or people suffering in the UK?
No.
Okay. At the moment, like the current stats say 16 million people in the UK suffer from a mental health problem. So that's 1 in 4. And in terms of like suicide rates, for example, over 5,000 people commit suicide every year in the UK. Yeah, that's a lot of people. Right. Considering,
is there a particular demographic and age bracket?
Yeah, it is actually. What's really interesting and really sad is that one of the biggest striking things about the suicide rates is that a third, I believe, are males. Or 2/3, something like that. So it's a massive number of males are committing. Sorry, 2/3 are males, and it's a huge number, And what's interesting about the suicide rates and about the rates of mental illness is that hasn't really changed over the last few years. And even when I was working in mental health services and in the academic world and in that field, we were still quoting the same numbers. But I think what I find more depressing is when we look at the stats on young people. And this is when actually it gets quite scary.
Right.
So I was looking at some of the NHS data recently, and they were saying, looking at the rates of mental illness among young people in the UK. So in the period of like 3 or 4 years, we went from 1 in 9 people young people suffer from a mental health problem in 2017 to 1 in 6 in 2020. So that's a huge increase, and that's recently. And on top of that, there has been also another study done by the Office of National Statistics, and their 2020 data says that around 30% of young people report suffering from depression or anxiety.
Right, yeah.
It is huge, it's a huge problem. So I feel like that's, it's what that illustrates is that this problem is not going away, it's actually getting worse, and we're going to see it getting worse in the next generation.
Right.
And then when I looked at sort of the Google Trend data, if you look at what people are searching online, again, paints a really interesting picture.
Yeah.
So when I looked at how many people are looking for trauma, because that's what I'm looking at for the book, how running helps with trauma. So in the last 5 years, the people searching for trauma has doubled in the last 5 years. And the search term for people seeking mental health support has also doubled in the same period. Right. So what that's saying is that people are struggling out there, people are looking for solutions, and what we have currently isn't really working. So, yeah.
So specifically when you say when they're searching for trauma, I mean, can you kind of just expand on that?
So when they're so with Google, you can look and see like what search terms people are searching for. So they might just be typing in trauma, and it picks up like how many times people are searching for that specific term.
Right. Okay.
So that term has been searched. Yeah. So I feel like it's pointing to kind of a big problem in our society, and at the moment, like the best solutions currently are still external. So it's all, go for medication or psychological therapy, which is great. But, on the NHS, you're still waiting for months if you're lucky to get it, and that's the reality. And another sad statistic is that, especially for people who suffer from depression, is that if you do manage to get through the door, get to see a psychologist, there's a 30% chance that it's not going to work for you. So lots of people are resistant to that kind of treatment. So again, it points to a situation where we need other solutions, and this is why I'm really passionate about running as a more holistic approach, an alternative approach to try and deal with stress, trauma, and difficulties, really.
Now, I just wanted to sort of touch on what you've just said, in that, I'm of the age where mental health, well, the term mental health didn't exist, sort of thing, and sort of the 80s and 90s and whatever. So was it that it wasn't talked about then, but in terms of actual figures, it was very much the same, or it's very hard to know. It's very much the same then as it is now. It's just that more people are aware of it, and therefore that's why they recognise it as either a state of mind or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true? Do you think it was people kind of didn't want to talk about it in the 80s and 90s, or they just thought it was just something, it's I'm just going through a phase, I'm just sad, and that's that kind of thing, and it was just not talked about?
Yeah. I guess, that is a really interesting question, very interesting one. And I guess it is partly that, partly, it's difficult to answer that one, but partly it is that, there's just more recognition about it, and we're talking about it a lot more, and wanting and willing to get some help for it. But also, even if you look at the UK, for example, even in the last decade, it's a culture towards it hasn't changed dramatically, but still the rates of people who are getting diagnosed with these things are increasing, and not just in the UK, but worldwide as well. So it's a complicated one to really give an exact answer to, I think.
We do live in, in the last 20 years, it is very different times. We've got the internet, what comes along with social media and everything. So it may be that because we didn't talk about it then, there weren't the stresses to younger people and to, us as adults. They weren't the same. It was a completely different time, and even I don't know. Totally. I've never known.
Absolutely, yeah. Exactly. I'm kind of curious about that as well, to see because I often talk to teachers about this issue. I've got 2 young kids who are at school, in primary school, and even the other day I went to the local school, and I was giving a talk about writing, and we talked about social media and the impact, and it was just the teachers are just it's just so obvious that children struggle with these things. Comparison becomes a big thing, body image, all of that, and I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to talk to teachers who from 20 years ago and what they thought about kids who are struggling with these things, and compare that. But just anecdotally, it's the conversation is such a big one at the moment in school setting about the difficulties of this generation with technology, and changing lifestyles and things like that. And mental health.
We could talk about this for ages, but I know it's just something I'm interested in, is that from the 50s to the late, even when I left school, which was 1980 or whatever, or even later than that. But it's just there was that period of time where it is so different to what's and just as an anecdote, I just joined my local gym recently, and I just saw someone there, and who I recognised, who I used to work there a long time ago, about 20 years ago, and I just thought to myself, it's just like when the last time I saw you, the world was a completely different place. It was,
Wow.
I know, it is,
Yeah.
it is. Anyway, moving on. That's it for another episode, and looking forward to speaking to you next week with some beginner hints and tips about running. I just want to let you know that you can follow me on X, or what was known as Twitter, at Brian's Run Pod. I have just recently set up a Facebook page which is called Brian's Run Pod, and I am on Instagram at Brian's Run Pod. Also, my website is www.briansrunpod.co.uk, where you can get show notes, or on whatever podcasting app you're listening to the show. Plus, all my episodes have chapter markers if you need to get to different segments of the show. Plus, leave a review, as it will help others find this podcast. Music is Happy Day by Stock Audio, not forgetting artwork by Alice Patterson. Till next week, thanks again for listening.